level of respect of that this is your baby, your project, your piece of art. Just like if you were witnessing or coming to anything that someone else made, you would want they would want you to treat that with respect. They should extend the same to you, or at least that's the way I see it.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like reverence for creation. It's like, if you create something, I know that you revere it. So like, I'll, out of respect in the interactions, I might not revere. Actually, I know I will not revere it as much as you do, but that's not the point. The point is to show respect. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's ultimately easy enough. It's not, you don't have to
You'd be surprised. Some people, brother, it does not come natural.
Yeah, it doesn't come natural, but it's still easy enough. You don't really have to overextend yourself to do that. You just have to be aware. But awareness is becoming a lost trait. Though in some senses, though in others, it is maturing. Where I try to not to get into the doomerous train of thought on people and their progression. We have more. People are always like, people are stronger back in the day, people who do this, that, and the third back in the day, so on and so forth. And that's always kind of bothered me, especially like they'll say people were so much tougher back then, back X and Y. We have more trained fighters right now than we have at any other point in human history. It is not even like a debatable fact. We know for a fact we have more trained professional fighters and like military combatants than we ever have at any other point in human history. What do you mean people are getting weaker now?
Well, I think it's the context, right? So perhaps it begs, in what context is that statement being made? Is it like, a lot of times when I hear that, it's usually like a generational thing. Like, the boomers are talking to the millennials like, you didn't have it as bad as we did. And in some respects, they're not wrong. We have at our disposal technology and advancements that do make our life easier. But in other respects, I would be like, hold my beer. What are you guys talking about? Our lives, financially speaking, opportunities is a double-edged sword, because I would say that there are simultaneously more opportunities and less at the same time, depending on who you are as a person, right?
I think it's always been the case.
Which has always been the case. But I guess I do subscribe to your train of thought of thinking, when it comes strictly to martial arts, humanity in unarmed combat has never been more deadly than they are today.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, tomorrow will be more deadly than today.
Yeah.
Because of mixed martial arts, and not just mixed martial arts, but I will say too, like the advancements of technology with like YouTube and social media and all this other stuff. It's never been easier.
Proliferation of knowledge.
Yes, it's never been easier to be deadly.
Yeah. To learn.
If you don't know how to defend yourself at this point,
it's because you don't want to.
It's because you chose it.
It's because you don't want to.
Ignorance is no longer a static. Now it's an option.
Yeah.
Which there's a beauty to that.
Yeah.
So if you choose not to be, that's fine. But you can't necessarily relegate your train of thought to everybody else.
Yeah.
So on that topic of becoming deadly with your hands, obviously you're a professional fighter, and you've been now competing, I want to say, man, for like what, 13, 14 years?
Yeah.
About that?
14, about to be 15, yeah.
About to be 15 years. And you are, what, 33, 34?
33, gonna be 34.
Okay, forgive me. I did a little research, but I didn't want to like... I like to come into these conversations a little like ignorant, because then it allows me to ask stupid questions, which could lead to a good conversation.
But having a rough outline's good.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be like 29. No. Yeah. Okay. What was it about, first off, mixed martial arts that kind of called to you to compete? Like, why weren't you just a jiu-jitsu guy who just wanted to do jiu-jitsu? Like, why did you start getting into the cage and thinking about fighting?
Well, started when I was a teenager. I got into wrestling my junior year of high school at Pattonville.
Okay. That's a St. Louis thing.
Yeah. Went to Pattonville, got into wrestling junior year, made varsity first year, conference champion, both years, really loved wrestling, was good at it, but, a bunch of people, like a bunch of the people around me had been wrestling since they were like 5.
Oh yeah, dude, coming
And
in junior
yeah,
year is rough.
yeah, I was like, so I was doing really good, but you move on to the like past college stage, I'm just going to be competing with people who've been wrestling as long as they've known how to walk on 2 feet, and that's just going to be rough. But at that time, MMA was very burgeoning. Like I'm looking at it. 2008 is the year I start wrestling. So like MMA is exploding, and I'm like, this is something I think I could be really good at. Something I really like. I grew up loving wrestling, professional wrestling. So there are a lot of visible similarities, and I'm like, this is something I could really like, really enjoy. And I started practicing and training more specifically past the wrestling to jiu-jitsu and boxing and MMA. And I was like, yeah, yeah.
Where did you first start training jiu-jitsu?
First started training jiu-jitsu. I was at Finney's for about a year.
Was
And
Ezra there during that time?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, Ezra was there.
Why do you say it that way?
I I don't enjoy Ezra as a coach. He was
Gotcha.
part of the reason I left. No judgment to him
Different
as
strokes for different folks.
no judgment to him as a person, but in my very early stages of learning jujitsu, he was a brown belt, he was the coach, he was an instructor, and I vividly remember when we would go for live rolls, he'd call me, which was fine, and I'm as tough as a $2 steak, and he even then, even with a minimal amount of knowledge, he would have a lot of trouble actually submitting me. So what he'd do is use his positional knowledge advantage, get to my back, and just dig his cup into my spine.
So he was
And
a mean grappler.
yeah, and as someone who's come further in the sport at this time, it's like I understand we got to be tough. There's a lot of grinding that happens, and you have to be resilient to pressure and things. But as someone advanced, I'm not digging my cup into a white belt spine.
Yeah.
I can do something else, and that's not a way to foster growth, especially when you're in a leadership position. And I think that reflects poorly.
That's a very good synopsis if that is in fact how you dealt with that and what you experienced. Yeah, listen, I've had many coaches in my day, and all I'll say about it is I don't think I've ever had a bad coach. I just didn't have good coaches for me.
Mm-hmm.
I've had good coaches for me. I've had great coaches for me. I've had all right, so, and that's the thing about the martial arts is like difficult because ultimately it's that human element, and sometimes you could have like a wealth of knowledge available to you, but that vibe check of personalities might just not mesh. And then it creates a hurdle of communication.
Yeah, it's
Maybe in his own way,
Yeah,
like if he was here, maybe he would say like, "Wow, I was trying to like break him in and like humble him or whatever." And maybe to him it made sense, but
yeah.
then you listen to your reenactment of the story, and it's like, dude, you did not leave a good impression.
yeah. Communication is key, and
Did he
that's
talk to you afterwards or no?
no. I just eventually ended up leaving.
Got you.
After there, I went to 10th Planet. There was a 10th Planet here in St. Louis between like 2009 and 2012. It was over off of Lindbergh, and I went there, and
More your vibe.
yeah. I really, as somewhat of an oddball, I really enjoy the 10th Planet system. There's a lot of drawing outside of the lines that occurs over there, and that was very beneficial for me in fostering my martial arts growth at that time.
Why would you consider yourself an oddball? Forgive me.
Just
Because of what you're into?
just me as a person. I don't really. It's like I fit in and communicate well with people and engage well, but growing up stigmas, I was particularly a bookworm, nerdy, that sort of thing, and that just generally puts you off into the counterculture, alt culture category, and that's the framework that I viewed it out of.
That's funny because that's the shit that makes people popular nowadays.
Yeah. Because everything has moved to a niche. Like you got to be appealing to a very specific audience, and it's easier to be latched onto if you have very defined edges, defined outlines, stuff that makes you different from someone else.
Well, actually, perhaps maybe this is a poor way to describe it. By the way, if that's getting uncomfortable having the mic that close to you, we can.
No, I'm fine.
Because it'll pick you up regardless.
I was just hamming it up.
Gotcha. No, I guess the reason I bring that up is, when I was little, I had this preconceived notion too of I was never the kid that had like the solid group of friends, but I was friends with everybody. Like everybody got along with me, and I got along with everybody. But I wasn't like the one that they would call to like go to the movies or anything like that. So like I had a lot of good surface level friendships, and I was friends with the kids that did chess. I was friends with the kids that did football. I just, when I was a little kid, dude, I was the biggest jock, but then I would also play World of Warcraft all the time. And then I'd be into anime, but then I also got into things that young boys get into, right? So like I just fit a lot of circles, let's say.
Yeah, very similar upbringing, I think. A very similar
you just did whatever the fuck
growing up
do.
path. Yeah.
That doesn't make it an oddball.
And that's Arion, we both participated in fighting people stripped to the waist in a cage. We are odd people.
Yeah.
That is
that's fair. That is fucking fair. That's a good point. Yeah. No.
like more than once. We did it and we're like, you know what? I like that. Let me do that again.
I said that to Terrell and Jared. I was like, dude, we are all kind of a little fucked in the head. I don't think that's okay.
It's not bad. It's not necessarily bad, but it is different.
But let me take a step back though, and then we'll come back. So like, you're not incorrect. But here's what I will say is like the same type of person, and maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't. The same type of person that will do that is also seems to be the kind of person who has depth to them. So like there will be the anime nerd, or perhaps it's the guy that comes in there and is an absolute killer in the cage, and then on his free time like saves animals or whatever. Every fighter that I've ever met has a lot of depth to them that the majority of people that I've met outside of this world, anecdotally, I can't speak for everybody, anecdotally, other people outside of this world don't seem to have that same depth. Just wanted to take a second to pause the action and just tell you guys, thank you so much for consuming our content. Easy Talk is a passion project. This podcast is just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to produce some cool stuff and talk to some cool people. One of the things I would very much appreciate is if you could possibly like the video or subscribe to the channel, just because it helps us in the algorithm and ultimately to grow, to get more exposure to everybody, including ourselves, and ultimately just make a better product. Take a second, I'd greatly appreciate it, and on with the show. Pick out someone from work, and I go, what do you do? And they're like, well, I work finance. What do you do on your free time? I drink. Okay, great. Like, now I just read your story with 2 pages, right?
A lot of people are afraid to be themselves and have been for a very long time, so they never really explore or flesh that out, so they don't gain those layers, that depth. And
what if that is themselves, though? What if themselves is no depth? Is that bad?
I think that there's going to be like a percentage of the population who's going to be like that, but I think overwhelming majority is people have had the depth suppressed from them. More so than just a complete lack of depth. There are people who are like that, but I think more often than not, it was something placed on them. I have theories on this, actually, very specifically. I think too many children had curiosity beaten out of them.
Agreed. Or not fostered.
Yeah.
Or not fostered.
Yeah. Both physically and psychologically. They just had that just beaten out of them. And that led to a bunch of adults who don't engage with their own curiosity or like drink to suppress it. Yeah. And so that's why drinking becomes their personality a lot of times.
It's so crazy that you say that, but no, you're not wrong. I would even take it a step further and say like society doesn't necessarily foster that if that is the mode for which you think to be successful. So like, but here's the problem though too, on the same flip of that coin, if you look at all these hyper successful people, none of them fit the mold of like the average person, like an Elon, like a Jeff Bezos, all these motherfuckers. These guys are the kinds of guys that like do think out the box, that did take the risks and all these other things. So it's like simultaneously, you and I will sit there and say like,
well, there were like for them, there are a lot of structural advantages. Like, not to say that they don't have creativity or thinking outside of the box. It's just that they had systems and opportunities in place that allowed them to get much further than most people who are maybe even more creative than them. It's a lot of the systems.
That is a very broad. I don't know if you could actually say that, because the metric for which you distinguish or measure, creativity, that's anecdotal. Creativity could be based, it's kind of like art or beauty. It's on the eyes of the beholder. So like someone you could look at and say, that guy's more creative than that guy. Why did that guy succeed? You're not incorrect in the assessment of like, what is luck, where opportunity meets preparation. So like if you have more opportunities,
you need less preparation.
Then being prepared, kind of, you can run with it, right? And if you are the most prepared person, but you have zero opportunity, you're not going to get lucky. So I do agree with you in that sense. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that caveat of like who we think, quote unquote, deserves it, that is going to change based on every single, think about it. My boy's doing a mixtape. He's the freshest thing since Jay-Z or whatever. Okay, says you. And then like if you ask someone else, like my sister, she's the greatest hairstylist I've ever seen. Okay, says you. It's like, the problem with that is that measurement is so vibes that you can't necessarily rely on it. Does that make sense? So I was with half of what you said until that second half. That's the only caveat that I would say is like, we can't distinguish who's more creative or not.
Not being able to necessarily distinguish who is more creative or not. But I was just saying like, theoretically, a person who is that we could all collectively agree is more creative may not have been provided the opportunities and systems in place to succeed.
That's fair. What do they say? The path to success is paved with the bones of the fallen.
For
every one successful guy, there's like 1,000 people crying.
Yeah, and 10,000 that help them. It's like I think often we get consumed with the single hero complex sort of mindset. It's like any great success we've had, the greatest successes that humanity has had, all of them have been collective efforts.
Agreed.
And I don't believe that we spend enough time appreciating that. Like that cooperation, teamwork, communication is one of our strongest features and the thing that has helped us succeed and thrive. And we always oftentimes it is easy to sensationalize, focus on division and things that wedge us against each other, but our greatest strength is our ability to work together. That anything that anyone has ever made that has been worth anything has been a collective effort. All of it.
You had me until that last point. There have been many instances in which like an individual has had an aha moment. The gentleman who discovered penicillin, for instance, that was in his lab by himself, where he just happened to come across a mold that was growing that was not antibacterial, but actively killed bacteria. So like, but this is just an anecdotal thing. Now you could say like after that initial aha moment, the spinning wheel of capitalism took over, and then the patents and all these other things. And that takes a team.
Even that, the very science that leads to that is him standing on the shoulders of a team. Like science is a collective effort of humanity. Every piece of knowledge that he had that led him to that discovery was based on knowledge gathered by people before
by his
that.
Predecessors. I would subscribe to that. We stand upon the shoulders of giants. Agreed. But it is not those giants that then are like, if I learn from, let's say, okay, let me give you martial arts as an example. I'm a white belt. I learned jiu-jitsu under you, right? And then I become like a jiu-jitsu world champion. Are you a jiu-jitsu world champion or am I?
We have individual accolades,
accolades,
but that is like that doesn't make you be a world champion, but I'm still a part of you being a world champion because we're a community, just the same way your mom who drove you to go and your brother who helped you work on stuff at home, they're not world champions, but they're a part of you being a world champion. And oftentimes we get so caught up in that person, that one world champion, that we don't look at the system that helped make them that. There are people who put in time, hours, sweat.
Do me a favor, pull this mic out away. No, do it. Yeah, pull it out, because if you're gonna get animated, it's for you.
Yeah, there are people who put time, hours, sweat, love, dedication into that, and that means something, and we should do a better job of being aware of it.
Agreed. If you would have made the comment that no one is self-made, I'd agree with you 100%. But the comment that, like, you know, everything that has ever been done is like this collective, I don't necessarily agree with that, because it does take the person to go out there and then actually achieve that thing. But it's a proxy, right? It's like a twofold. So like, let's say I'm the guy who invents penicillin. That is now my time in this moment right now. And then what happens to me? Then I become an annal of history. And then the next person that comes up to then, you know, stand upon my shoulders, take what I've done, and then hit that new stride. You're right in the sense that, like, they wouldn't have been able to achieve that without the predecessors, correct? But that person that then, you know, exceeds the previous generation, they did that. And they do deserve the merits and the roses for stepping up to that occasion. Now, is it good to also say what you're saying and, like, acknowledge the it doesn't even have to be a previous generation. It could be the people to my left and to my right. To your point of saying, like, we don't necessarily do a good job of, you know, giving the cumulative their roses and stuff like that. My response to that would be like, of course we do. We have names for them. Apple, Microsoft. You can't like physically, you know, I'll say the gyms, like St. Charles MMA, right? There's like 50 guys that go to St. Charles MMA. What are you going to do? Every time you talk about St. Charles MMA, list each guy individually. The problem is the human mind, the capacity for it. So we just go Jeff Bezos and Amazon, Elon Musk and SpaceX, right? We associate the leader and then the group. But to be in that group, I'll give you a prime example. My wife works for Boeing, and she takes great pride in that. When Boeing wins a government contract, she texts me like, "We did it." So you it's a fair assessment to make, but I think that that's also like a characterization that you might feel, but other people might feel like, no, we did it. The collective group did it. I don't necessarily know if that's healthy or not. I guess what I am trying to say is you're onto something. It's just a few points I don't agree with, if that makes sense. Well, what would you say to my rebuttal out of curiosity? You think I'm full of shit?
No. I respect that as viewpoint because we're all approaching life in our own individual viewpoints. But even with the Bill Gates and Microsoft and Jeff Bezos and Amazon, these entities benefit from billions of taxpayer dollars, and we don't do enough of acknowledging that, I'd say. Like, in our collective efforts, in their collective efforts, the recognition and acknowledgments that they get, they don't do nearly enough acknowledgement of the fact that U.S. taxpayers are spending billions of dollars to make these accomplishments, these achievements, these items come to fruition, and there's not enough value placed on that.
I read two books recently. One was Abundance by Ezra Klein, and the other one is Who's in Our Government by forgive me, I forget the author off the top of my head. Essentially what they are very liberal-leaning books, and the reason I read them was because I was kind of finding myself kind of delve too much into capitalism, the market, entrepreneurship, which, don't get me wrong, I do believe in all of those things. However, you are hitting the nail on the head. What you're essentially saying is, can you have a Microsoft and AOL if, you know, government didn't necessarily create the infrastructure for the World Wide Web and the internet as we know it? Well, then no, you can't have that. But could you have an Amazon
specifically, like,
without a
subsidies, like legit, like
subsidies now?
Yeah.
Right now? They're
Yeah.
not subsidies. I wouldn't call them subsidies. What I would call them is incentives to bring in work and manufacturing and jobs here within the States because it's a global economy.
All right.
America
Okay.
is in competition with everybody else.
We,
It's a global market.
it is a global market, but like that's just it. It's a global market. You have to find a way that it works for as many people as possible. And
No, you don't. That's a utilitarian approach. But you don't have to do that.
well,
Forgive me.
one should attempt to opt for a market that helps as many people as possible, that doesn't disadvantage as many people as possible. I would assume, hope.
I'm with you, but why? I think I'm following you, but why? Why would you say that?
Because that provides the best outcomes for the most number of people.
If you would have said that it makes the most business sense, I would have agreed with you. A utilitarian approach doesn't necessarily mean that it would make the most sense for a company to do that. But I think if capitalism, this is why I trust greed. Because like, let's say I'm making a drink, okay? And this drink is very good. Do I want to sell it to like only women or only men? Or I'm only going to sell it to black people? No, I want my product to be for everybody. Why? Because I want the most fucking money possible. Now, if my drink is good, and the most amount of people buy it, then I'm inadvertently causing the most amount of good for the most amount of people by virtue of capitalism. But that's not necessarily the goal. The goal was maximizing profits. And in that pursuit, that utilitarian approach is kind of like a secondary outcome by proxy. That's why I'm saying like, you're actually like making an argument for why capitalism, or at the very least a mixed economy, works. And I would agree with that. But I don't think the end goal of what these people are looking for is necessarily like, I don't think Jeff Bezos said, you know, I'm going to make a book company to get the most amount of books in the hands of people. He's like, I just want to sell a lot of books and make a lot of money. So inadvertently he helped people, but I don't think that was like, I'll give you a prime example. The podcast is like, I wanted to do this, right? Like that, I wanted to do this. Like it could help people. It could help someone promote a business. It could help you promote the next fight. Like, great. That's a side effect of it. And I'm here for that. But the reason I did it wasn't because I was like, I want to help a bunch of people. I want to do a podcast.
You want to make your art.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily your responsibility to help a bunch of people if in the course of making your art, if it's just about making your art. But if you receive billions of taxpayers' dollars, it becomes your responsibility to
Agreed.
help people.
If that is the case, if you're saying that if I'm going to receive a stipend or a subsidy or whatever from the government to do that, well then if I accept that money, then I'm beholden to that government.
Yeah.
And there's some value in that train of thought. In fact, I would say that is probably the best argument for repatriatizing companies and saying, hey, two things can be right at the same time. We could be in a global market in total competition, and then you can also tell these companies like, hey, motherfuckers, you wouldn't be here without us. So like, let's bring back a little bit of patriotism. Let's bring back a little bit of incentives for you to grow this country that grew you. I think that is actually a very good argument to be made. However, here's where I always get with this is, you know, I am willing to have the conversation of increasing my tax dollars if we are willing to have the conversation of where those tax dollars go. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's no reason to increase your tax dollars. There is no reason that someone in your tax bracket should have to pay more in taxes, realistically. Our problem has always been taxing those with the most money, because that's where all the money is. And if it wasn't where all the money is, that wouldn't be where all the money's going.
Can I say something though?
Yeah.
It's not about individuals.
Yeah, I'm not
because
saying,
there's no trillionaires, right?
Yeah.
You have $1 trillion companies.
Well,
unless you're like Putin or Saudi prince.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah.
Forgive me. On paper, we don't think there's any trillionaires. Yeah. Fair. That's a duly noted.
Saudi Arabia does a lot.
But this is always my big argument. So whenever I'm hearing this like increase in tax on the wealthy, I said this on a previous podcast with Gabe. I was like, if people are upset with the wealthy, I get it, especially now more than ever, because wealth inequality is a thing. I'll be the first person to tell you that. However, there is also a part of me that's like, it is also America that allowed me to acquire my wealth and succeed in my life, because I grew up poor, right? So it's like this double-edged sword of like, I can kind of understand where people are coming from. I can understand the frustrations now more than ever, but I don't necessarily think that the outcome that gets us to the promised land is taxing the like. Let me ask you this before I make this comment. What do you think should be like the top line? You make $1 billion a year. What should be the federal and then the state income tax on that money? What do you think?
If you
could wave a wand.
If I could wave a wand, you make $1 billion a year. I'd say 30%. 30% goes to the federal government and 20% to the state. You should go home with $500 million. Like, and that's the sort of thing that we're talking about for like billionaires. Like,
so then let me go like a step below that. Let's say you make 500 million a year. So roughly half of that. Let's say you make 500. What would you say to that? Like, would you say half the tax of that? So if at $1 billion you're doing 30% federal, 20% state, at 500 million you do 15% federal, 10% state.
Yeah,
that would make some sense.
Yeah.
Personally, I think taking half of anybody's money is just too much. But I can understand.
I understand as an emotional reaction hearing that, taking half of someone's money, that doesn't feel good. But I'm from a practical standpoint, if you're taking home $500 million, you'll be fine. It's
not about your consumptive capabilities. And then let me also caveat that like, if the argument that I hear about like taxing the wealthy was catered more towards the corporations, there's an argument to be made there, because I was talking earlier about like some of the incentive bases and like the tax haven, not havens, but the tax incentives for like, onshoring this, that, or the other. The prime example would be tariffs, right? So like Trump is like, hey, if you're going to make this shit over here, I'm going to tax you 20% to bring it over here and take to utilize our markets. So you can either hit that 20% or you could come over here, make the jobs here. People are more employed with higher incomes, and then you don't have to pay that 20%.
It's just weird how that's playing out though, because these pauses and deals made lend to the idea that these tariffs aren't permanent, and if they're not permanent, companies aren't encouraged to make jobs over here.
Yeah, I'm not going to be the one that argues. So let's separate two things. I'm not going to be one that makes the argument that the way Trump is handling the tariffs is in an intelligent manner. Personally, I would also agree with you that when you're shooting from the hip on these tariffs in, out, 40%, 80%, there's no way anybody in corporate America is going to do any sort of investments, right? But I don't think it's necessarily, I don't want to defend it because I also don't think it's intelligent. The only caveat I will say is it's 100% a bargaining chip to essentially like equalize the markets and say, hey, you guys benefit from our consumptive capabilities, and we understand that globalism won.
But how does it do that?
In what respect?
If it's not bringing jobs here to one thing, side tangent, total aside, I wish we lived in a better world where people like Donald Trump were just performance artists. Donald Trump is an objectively hilarious and charismatic person, and I think that has helped lead him to where he is. I don't think he is very fit for the job, and I think if we lived in a better world, he'd just be on like regular TV, probably like hosting some red carpet show, making fun of people, because that's really where he shines when he gets the opportunity to give a jab to somebody. He is objectively a very funny man.
Yeah.
And I think that's the distance that we should best enjoy him. And I don't think we get to do that because sometimes things are very unserious.
I was presented a choice between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Now, I would have voted RFK Jr. had I been given that choice, but RFK Jr. decided to step down and join Donald Trump.
I just can't vote for anyone who admits to having brainworms. Like you,
RFK Jr.?
Yeah.
Brother, if you're going to take the collective for your vote, then none of them get the nod, right? We can all agree on that.
Yes. Yes, I
But
did.
we're presented with options. Bernie Sanders actually on the Andrew Schultz podcast did a very good thing where he was like, hey, the Democratic Party fucked you, and then you still caucus with them. And what was his response? Yeah, this is the system. Like, what do you want me to do? If I don't necessarily play the game, then there's kids that go without. There's this, that, or the other.
Yeah, yeah.
So my options, like when we're talking about DJT specifically, was
You
Kamala Harris or DJT.
and
And I chose DJT. And by the way, outside of like tariffs and stuff like that, truthfully, I'm getting about 80 to 85% of what I voted for.
Okay. Just I think the election itself was a systemic failure. I think that these two people being our candidates, it speaks to a much larger failing of our systems, because to operate in a world where these are the best two candidates for running our country seems like a distressing problem.
That is a fair critique to make. And I think there would be a lot of people, and there's also a portion of myself that would agree with you. But then my response to you would also be, if you look at the Republican Party, first of all, I want to get this caveat out of the way. I genuinely don't think that there's any difference between Republican Party and Democratic Party when it comes to Congress. And we're seeing that happen in real time with the spending bill, right? With lowering taxes, but also lowering some spending, but then ballooning the debt. So like
people like to paint them as being much different, and one being significantly
I think
worse
they're
than
both
the
the
other.
swamp.
It's like if the Republicans are in the kitchen eating babies, the Democrats are in the dining room preparing the babies.
Yeah. Okay, I'm agreeing with you on that one. But here's my problem with the assertion that you said, like, you know, how did both of these people come into this position to where we're voting for?
I know
system,
how.
the system.
I know how. I'm well aware of how. I'm just speaking toward the fact that it is indicative of a systemic failure that was where we were at.
I think it's half of that. Okay, listen, I'm not a Trumper by any means. I'm not MAGA. Okay.
No one has said you are.
Exactly.
You keep saying you're not.
I need to preface this because I'm going to defend the guy, but I'm not doing so like blindly. I'm going to kind of objectively do it. They actively, the Republican Party this time around, did do the primary. They tried their hardest. I mean, his previous vice president even got into the race. They tried their hardest, but he had, you know, galvanized a base, and that base said, this is who we want. I would actually make the comment that for Donald Trump to be the Republican nominee, the system was working. Because the system, at that point, the Republican Party was actively working to not have him be the nominee. He wouldn't do debates, which I personally think, if there's anything that should be codified into law, every presidential candidate should be forced into the debate stage. I don't care. If you're applying for a job, I can't tell you, oh, I've had this job before, I don't want to interview. So like, I did not like that. I also think that if there are valid candidates from third party means, like RFK Jr. was one, but there were a couple from the Green Party and so on, I want to hear their voices too. If we really want to talk about, you know, how did we get to this position, it's 100% because of the duopoly, which is actually a monopoly. But the Republican Party actively fought to prevent Trump from being the nominee, yet he was still the nominee because the people, the caucus, the constituents decided that. The Democratic Party, what they did this time around,
was anti-democratic.
And not just that, you cannot be the party that complains. So I'm an independent. I voted Obama, Trump. But if you would have presented to me a candidate that they don't have to be conservative, like financially on all things. I'm actually like, I'm fluid with a lot of the things that I want. I'm pro-choice, and then I'm kind of conservative on financials, but I also I want to stop bombing brown people halfway across the world. You know what I mean? Like, ask me on a topic, I might surprise you.
A lot of that.
If the Democratic Party would have presented to me a candidate that was
clear about those things,
not just clear about those things, but like had a stance. Say what you want about
clear,
DJ.
clear about those things,
and also went through the proper channels in your party as well. When I say your, I don't mean your. You know what I mean? Like
the collective party. You. I got you.
Yeah. But, so it's like,
but no, for the camera, no.
You don't strike me as you fit a mold either. Let me put it to you that way.
I fit more of Black Panther, Free Breakfast sort of mold.
But let me put it to you this way: if in 2020, what do we got? 2028. If in 2028 the Republican nominee is like J.D. Vance versus a Pete Buttigieg or like some, you know, Democrat swamp, I'm going to vote Republican again. But if you can bring somebody that I genuinely can kind of correlate some sort of independence with, like a Bernie but like 30 years younger, maybe we can start talking about me voting blue again. I didn't leave the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party left me.
They leave everyone. That's what they're real good at.
By the way, the Republican Party's not doing a great job of that right now either, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
When you have the House, the Senate, and the executive, and you're talking about like the Democrats won't work with you on this, that, or bill,
everything
it's like, dude, you lose that.
Everything seems to always end up as complaints for like what the previous administration did, and I'm like, nobody cares.
Yeah. What are you doing today? But you also lose that scapegoat. It's like you guys have the majority in everything. What do you need? A super majority?
Get it done. But,
what do you need?
But to assume they're not getting done what they want to get done is to assume a level of incompetence that I'm not comfortable doing. I think that they are getting done what they want to get done.
I agree 100%. And that's why if you would have catered the discussion of saying like, not necessarily the presidential election system is, you know, fucked or whatever, but if you would have said that like Congress itself, the function of Congress to represent its constituents, I would say that is fucked.
Well, I think that's downstream. I think it's all one river, and I think the jam is much like higher up, further back.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, none of us know.
I'll tell you what, it's hard not to get blackpilled sometimes, though.
But
doom and gloom.
That's why I come back to the believing in humanity and our collective efforts. We've gotten this far based on our ability to cooperate, share, and forward think. We have the capacity. We can go further. It is very easy to go down that road, but try to always not to, because it's not productive. It's not productive for you, and it's not productive for society as a collective.
Well, let me ask you this, though, because it seems like right now more than ever, it seems like there are a million voices in the ether all complaining. Mm-hmm. But very few people have like some sort of constructive feedback of like, this is what I would do. So like the system is broken. Okay. Well then like what is like I'm not saying like give me 100 steps to fix it, but like what's step one?
I always think step one is build community. I think part of these situations part of these situations are heavily predicated on people being divided, divisive, and away from each other. So just building communities. Me and my girlfriend have from time to time helped with free stores. She works
free stores.
Yeah, stores that provide like essentials to communities, like in need communities.
That seems like a charity. What is a free store? Forgive me.
A free store is literally what
you
it
go
sounds
in and
like.
Everything's free.
Yeah, but we'll set up like a table on a corner of a street where in a community where we know people need stuff, and we'll have toothpaste, socks, deodorant, soap. You know,
essentials,
household needs, things that people need, and just provide that for them. And did that pretty regularly. My girlfriend currently works for Operation Food Search, and so that's a nonprofit that provides food out. And we've helped gone to events for that. Probably going to be at the Pride event, working and helping with that. But that's one of the steps. As an individual, you can be the change that you want to see out in your community. The more connected, the more attached we are to each other, the better we are able to help each other and know what each other needs. Part of the proliferation of the black pill option, the doomerism, is people feel so isolated. But if we do a better job of building communities, extending our hands out to one another, we drastically reduce that. We inoculate ourselves as a community to that, because we have systems in place that these people feel like that they can go out to, hands that they feel are there for them to reach out to.
I agree 1,000% actually. Mm-hmm. I do think that when people feel isolated, that's when they're the easiest to prey upon. Mm-hmm. However, I would ask you this question. Do you feel like the polarization or the amount of just energy in politics today, good and bad, right? Because like energy can create a group that moves to actually enact change. It can also create people to cause harm and break shit and all those other things.
Change goes both ways.
Yeah. I mean, fire, right? You can use it to cook, or you can burn a house down. My question for you is, do you think, though, in this era of hyperpolarization politically, perhaps creating communities is more difficult now than ever? Especially, too, I'll add another caveat, the reduction in just religion overall.
I actually think it's a...
Even though it's making a comeback.
It's a bit of the
God
inverse.
is cool again.
It's a bit of the inverse. I think communities are easier to build now. It's why we have so many... It's part of the reasons why we have so many...
Echo chambers?
Yeah. It's like you're able to build a community that you...
With like-minded people.
That you never have to leave.
Yes.
And that community may be in your house at your computer that you never leave.
Yeah. Reddit, whatever sort of...
Twitch.
Yeah, you can choose your echo chamber now.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, it's like that... not recency bias, but what do you call it when people around you think the same way that you do? So it amplifies that you think you're correct. It's not recency bias. It's like proximity bias or something like that. Essentially, everyone around me is saying the thing that I said. Therefore, the thing that I said is smart. Well, maybe it's just that you guys weren't presented with a differing argument. By the way, it works both ways. Yeah. If you go to like a fundraiser for a Republican Party or a fundraiser for the Democratic Party, echo chambers.
That's one of the reasons I'm upset about all the stuff that's happening towards like public schools, this move toward charter schools. It's like you're able to do that with the school system. You're able to create an echo chamber with a school system now, whereas public schools provided the opportunity where you had to be with people who were in...
Here's why I disagree. Because the federal government, the Department of Education, would come down and change the curriculum. So like I would agree with you in isolated context.
I mean schools that we grew up in, the very schools.
I'm a product of public school. But I'll tell you right now, with the way public school is going, my daughter's going to private school. And not because I don't think that public school, like I don't think the ship can't be turned around. In fact, in the coming weeks, I have 2 teachers that are going to come on to talk about education. So perhaps I am ignorant towards some things, and I will be illuminated.
We all are.
Yeah, fair. So I don't want to come across as like I know it all. I don't. I know I don't. But what I will say is I'm a product of public school. So is my wife. We turned out fine. But the public school that we had when we were little is fundamentally different from the public school that exists today. Both good and bad. There's a bunch of things that are for the better. Some things that are for worse. The only reason I kind of disagree with your idea of like, charter schools create a kind of like this echo chamber is that the echo chamber is already being created at the federal level with curriculum. I think what's happening is the market is deciding. People with money are saying, I don't want my kid to learn these things. I want my kid to learn these things. You can't say that, one of the things I think is going good with education is technological advancements, the fact that you could have, it didn't turn out that well, but COVID, you could do remote learning, X, Y, and Z. One of the bad things is literacy rates, mathematics rates. I mean, we're just becoming dumber as a society. So then can you actively look at education, the public education system, and say that it's working? I don't think you can.
I think that those issues may not necessarily... I don't believe that those issues are necessarily solved by the structure that we're currently putting into place, is what I would say. Of course...
Can you, go into that if you don't mind. The structure that we're putting in place or have in place, can you just extrapolate that for me?
This move to eliminate the Department of Education, dissolve, I think...
Do you think it's been a success? The Department of Education, not the move to remove it, sorry.
I think its existence as it currently stands in the system that we are operating in provides more benefit than getting rid of it.
Can I add a caveat, though? Yeah. Because the gutting of the Department of Education still stands for federal spending for a lot of the things that people were talking about, specifically special needs children, things of that nature. So while I would normally agree with you if you were talking about gutting it completely, that isn't necessarily what's going on with it. It's getting gutted, correct. But the essentials there that a lot of the lobbying firms are fighting for, this is the problem with politics. It's like the same thing that we hate about politics. The lobbying companies and the people that are representing the NGOs are actually the ones fighting for all this funding to stay, and they're actually doing a lot of good doing it. So like a lobbyist could be bad and good, right? No such thing as just pure evil or pure good.
Yeah.
But I would say that the Department of Education was an extreme failure. Based on just simple metrics. The funding could be capped for certain things. I would agree with you there. But then do you need a Department of Education or do you just need federal funding for certain for certain, what would you call it? I think if you had federal funding tied to the state and the state was able to spend that money on specific needs, like I'll give you something that I'd be fine with my tax dollars going to. Every kid, if we're going to mandate that everyone has to go to school, then we have to feed them. No kid should have to pay for their own lunch if I'm forcing you to be here.
Yeah.
So like if you told me, Ariane, I'm going to tax you and that is going to go towards school lunches, cool. Ariane, we're going to tax you and that's going to go towards like a special education teacher at every school specifically for special needs kids, cool. We're going to tax you more and we're going to put a resource officer for the safety of all these kids, cool. There are things where I do think the federal government does have a play at, but the standardization of education is not one of them. Let the market decide. And the good schools will thrive and the bad schools will go under. And then new schools will be brought up.
There are certain sectors that I just don't trust the market to handle.
Okay. Education being one of them?
Yeah, because I feel like it too easily puts the best interest of the select few at the top. Like it just,
well, it's not a company doing it. It would still be the state and the municipalities.
The market itself.
Yeah, but that's the people voting with their feet because they have to move, right?
Feet and dollars.
Yeah.
And like the more dollars you have, the bigger your vote is in the market.
Yes and no, not specifically in this one. Let me kind of explain what I mean, okay? So let's say I went to Afton High School, okay? So if I live in Afton, a part of like my tax dollars goes to Afton High School. If Afton High School, like it's not Afton High School, the conglomerate or the LLC, it's by the state, then the city, then the municipality, you know how it kind of goes down. So like I can do one of three things, right? If I don't like the school, I can either move out of Afton to a district in which I do like the school. That would probably be the hardest one to do, right? The most expensive one. I could then, if not number one, number two, just take my kid to private school, which is the market. It's privatization of education. Or if I like the school, I can stay. And then that's kind of like I'm telling them, hey, you're doing a great job. We've been here. My kids are growing up here. Keep doing a great job. If you have people that are leaving because of the school system, Limburg, for instance, the Limburg school system is like one of like apparently the best school systems in in St. Louis. So like the property values of all those homes are skyrocketing because majority of the people, and Limburg is a public school.
Yeah.
So like it's kind of strengthening both of our arguments where the market is deciding, and it's not necessarily the market as like an LLC.
Yeah.
It is the market of people moving with their feet to that school system that's doing really well. And if a school system isn't doing really well, then they deserve to be destroyed and then risen again under new management like you would do for any other business. But what I don't want is a standardization of like your poor, like your test scores and all this other stuff. First of all, I think education needs to be overhauled. The way we teach, that's another argument, right?
Yeah.
But that also the way we teach is a direct reflection of the Department of Education and standardized testing and telling teachers that they can't get fired for being shit. This is what it is. What would be your like response to my articulation of why I think that ultimately people deciding with their own feet and not necessarily from mount on high is the proper way to do education?
These it's very similar to like the voucher style program, and these were
can you tell people about the voucher for those that might not know?
You as a parent get a voucher for the school that you want to send your child to.
Even if you live in Afton, you can
if
send
you live
your
in X, you
kid
can
to
send
Limburg.
kid to Y. A lot of these programs have roots in segregation, like in immediately post-segregation. These were ideas that really crystallized and formed right around then. So especially from an analytical viewpoint who's seen that play out over history, I'm leery of it, because even though it itself may not be like evil, a lot of people with evil ambition and evil intent coalesce around that idea, and that's why I am leery of it.
Do you think that it's possible that the people that are currently running education have evil intent as well?
Oh, yeah, certainly. It's distinctly possible.
I guess I will agree with you where perhaps you don't necessarily want like a full free market approach to education, because I think we will both agree that a proper education is the easiest metric to see if whether or not someone has a higher propensity or a lower propensity for success.
Yeah.
And that if we can educate all peoples, we're better off as a nation for it. Going back to that patriotism, whether you're black, brown, white, I really don't care. The better education, the better the country. The better the country, the better the world.
Better outcomes.
The better world my daughter will inherit because we're going to live here. You know what I mean? So I'm with you in the sense that I think there are things that can be changed. I don't know if necessarily like a full market approach is the correct way, because I don't want to see that. By the way, that option does exist if you have money. You can go to private schools and you could do that. I think, though, I don't know if the federal government handling, specifically the Department of Education handling the standard of education, has proven over the course of history to be the proper way to do it. Do you think that that should be something left to a state, or do you think that the federal government should have that that standard set?
I think the federal government should have that standard set, because when we left it up to states, there were a lot of states very inclined to not let black people do anything.
Yeah, but that was a different time. Surely you can understand that. If we were to leave it back to states now, there are amendments that would not allow for that to go back.
Well, once again, it's like I'm leery to trust the books on these sorts of things,
but
because
you trust the government, which is the ones making the books.
This isn't trust of the government, especially trust of the federal government. It's just like a viewpoint of how outcomes have played out. When like individual states, you're going into like Mississippi didn't get slavery off the books till 2013. I don't like letting.
I don't know if that's real.
Yeah.
Slavery was emancipated with the 16th Amendment.
Yeah, but under like state law.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because there's a federal amendment that supersedes it. So you might say like the state didn't get around to eliminating it like off the books, quote unquote. But correct me if I'm wrong. The 16th Amendment abolished slavery, so that's technically like an inaccurate statement.
Except for
I'm not trying to get into semantics.
Yeah. But
well, I would agree that I'll give you some I'll give you an olive branch. I think that the penitentiary system, there should be no, like there are things I think the government should handle and then shouldn't handle, right? Yeah. One of the things that I think that the market should have no handling of whatsoever is incarcerating human beings. I think that the government, first of all, our rights are inalienable, gifted by God. And if we as a society choose to eliminate those rights from you, then we need to go through the proper judicial system and all these other things. The laws of the land, which, as we've just previously stated, can change over the course of time. Because at one point, it was illegal for a black man to be free. And we've grown since then, right? So those laws can also change. But one thing that I want to make sure is like never going to be the case going forward, and obviously I have no power to do this, is I don't think there should ever be an instance where there is a profit incentive in the incarceration and the elimination of freedoms of human beings. Yeah. That should never be a thing.
Yeah.
So like that's where like I would say like no, actually I would want a government entity to kind of handle that and not the market, quote unquote.
I want to pivot us back to like martial arts, because we got into such a
brother between you and I'm loving this shit.
Yeah,
thank you for being on.
Fantastic. Like I said, a healthy exchange of ideas. It's good. It's necessary.
I think you say these things in good faith. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't get the vibe that you're like, because there's a lot of times when I talk to people about not just politics, but a differing of ideas, sometimes I feel like the outcome is to try to persuade me to their way of thinking and not necessarily try to understand my perspective. You're going to probably leave here not changed one bit, and I probably will as well. But at the very least, we can like, I can at least empathize with like, okay, I understand why CJ thinks differently from me. His lived experience, his past, his lineage, whatever. My lived experience, like we're going to come to different conclusions. But I want the end goal to still be the same, like a more prosperous and free America. I want everybody to...
It's like maybe we don't necessarily change, but we now have a new lens to view things out of. We have a better... We have an alternate viewpoint that we can now extrapolate from, and that's good.
Bringing it back to fighting, forgive me, off of the
Yeah.
penitentiary system.
It's like I went from 10th Planet, then eventually I made my way over to St. Charles. By the point I made
What
my
year was that? Out of curiosity, because we said like 2008 is when you started training.
Yeah, I started wrestling in 2008. I then started training for MMA in early 2010. Had my first fight in like September of 2010.
Damn, quick.
Yeah. Beat the guy, Anaconda choke, 2 minutes. I was 18 at the time. He was 28. And woo, like, not, crack don't feel that good. It can't. It cannot. It cannot feel as good as winning your first fight, especially by finish. Ooh, man. Oh yeah, I was in.
Different from winning a wrestling match.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. One thing too, wrestling is hell. Wrestling, I love wrestling, but actively competing in wrestling is the absolute worst. I've been in tournaments where I fought 3 times in one night before. I've never been as tired as I have after a single wrestling match that went to double overtime.
Yeah.
I've never experienced anything in my life that has rendered me so tired as a single wrestling match that went to double overtime.
I always tell people I'm glad I did wrestling, but if you told me to do it again, I tell you to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
I did it. I'm happy I did it.
With 2 dicks. Never again. Oh man, I compete in wrestling? No.
I tell people all the time, fighting is great.
Yeah.
Fighting is awesome.
Yeah.
Fighting is nowhere near as hard as wrestling was.
No, not even remotely. But I think that's part of the reason why wrestling is such a good base for MMA, because not even just the physical nature of it, the mental resilience, because wrestling teaches you your suffering's not gonna end, keep moving.
Yeah.
It's like do not look for rest or reprieve. It's not coming. You best die at the top of that hill.
Yeah, it's a good way to describe it.
Because if you don't, you're gonna have to do it again.
So you win this fight, this euphoria that overwhelms you from winning. Is this the catalyst for what you would say you quote unquote fell in love with martial arts?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a catalyst.
Or maybe competition. Right?
Yeah, where I fell in love with MMA, more specifically MMA competition. I knew this was something that I'm going to do again from that moment. It was funny too, because at the time, like I said, I was 18. I was hiding it from my mom. I didn't tell. I didn't. I was like, a kid's frame of thinking. I was like,
what did you think about all your gear and the gloves, and you just hit it live?
I kept it in the car. It was just like it was loose. I'm outside all the time.
Where's she asking? Where are you?
I'm out all the time. I'm like in practice, like a 2-hour a day sort of thing.
She knew.
No,
she didn't know.
No, she did not, because I know the moment she found out, because I came home with a black eye. Like a bad one where I had to explain.
I fell down some steps.
Yeah, but for a while I was keeping it from her, because I was like, my mom cares about me deeply. I know that's what, but me and my mom have always had a very good relationship. She always cared. She's always been very. I'm her only child. She's always been very attentive to me. So
brother.
yeah. So
you're the baby and the sole heir.
Yeah. So she worries, she
protective.
does. And I was like, I can't let her know that I'm fighting people until I'm like at least have proof that I'm good. I gotta be.
No, mom, no, for real, no.
But I'm cold. You don't understand.
You should see the other guy.
like you don't understand. I'm sick. I'm really sick with it. So but I came. Luckily, the fight that I had the black eye from, I won. So.
Oh, it's from a fight. It wasn't from practice.
Yeah, no. It was from a fight.
I
I got lumped up in a fight because nobody was beating me up like that in practice. I would hope not. But yeah, I let her in, and eventually she came to be my biggest fan, my biggest supporter, and I appreciated her to the moon and back for it.
God bless.
Yeah, that's something I benefited from. I know a lot of people don't always have their family support in all of their endeavors and all of their aspirations. I did, and I'm very happy for it.
While we were hiding it, and then when she figured out.
Yeah.
Well, she could have zigged or zagged.
But we got there, yeah. Especially finding out under those circumstances.
How old were you when she found out?
I think I was.
Was this early in the career, or
Yeah,
were you in for a little bit?
yeah. I kept it a secret. I think for about a year and a half.
That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah, relatively.
My
long.
dad knew after day 2.
Yeah,
I tried to, and he's like, "That's not wrestling."
Luckily, it's like I've never bruised much. I don't cut easy, so there was a long time I was able to keep it because I wasn't like coming home all banged up or anything. But that one time,
Yeah.
But
So you were going from 10th Planet to St. Charles MMA.
I went from 10th Planet to Modern Combat Systems.
MCS, okay.
With Jared, my brother Hugh, and Charles, and all Scott, Fred, Fierce, even CJ at the time, Charles Johnson, he was there with us.
Sean Woodson too, right?
Yeah, and Sean. Shout out Sean, shout out Charles. Y'all doing it real big. Love to see it. Yeah, we had quite an interesting collective there. That's not a time in my career I want to skip over because it's going back to things. Even there's a little bit of separation in the MMA community as far as like that I, from my personal experience, that black fighters experience a little bit. Not saying that any individual gym isn't welcoming to us, but especially in St. Louis, coming from different parts of St. Louis, your life and lived experience can alter you drastically based on where you are and where you grew up in St. Louis City. And
can I add a little context for someone that might be uninitiated? Was it because that MCS was located in North County, right? And for those that might not understand the structural components of St. Louis, East Side is like the strip clubs and the gambling and all this other stuff. North Side is predominantly urban, mostly associated with black people. South Side is like middle class white people, middle class black people, just middle class people. Yeah. And then West County would be the affluent, the wealthy, right? So like MCS was located in the north side of St. Louis, so the MCS gym was predominantly black fighters from that area.
Yeah.
Would that be a safe assessment of the story?
And based on being there, the coaches and fellow gym goers were those who were more understanding to the needs and eccentricities of black St. Louis fighters, because there's a very specific experience that we have with the city. It's just historically, it's not. There are a lot of us who may not be welcome into every place based on the way they speak. Just
really.
Not directly banned from, but othered, made to feel different, less than, etc.
They didn't want your kind around here.
Yeah, a soft sort of thing. And
in the county, though, forgive me, like in the city,
I'm not saying any place in specific, but there
high level.
Yeah, there are areas, there are places, there are gyms where it's just going to be, you're just going to experience more friction being there than others as a black fighter from St. Louis.
That's legitimately shocking to me because like the city is mostly associated with like African American like demographics.
Yeah.
So I want to be careful how I ask this question. Was it black people othering other black people, or was it like other demographics in the city othering black people? I'm trying to understand. Forgive me. I'm trying to understand, but I also don't want to like pinpoint the person. Like I want to kind of leave them anonymous.
Yeah.
Because like if you told me you went to West County in Ladue, that would make sense to me, right? Different cultures.
Yeah.
But if you told me like, okay, we went from MCS to like South Broadway boxing club, which is also like in the city, a lot of black boxers, like I don't necessarily see why that would cause friction.
Yeah, it wouldn't, because that's specifically one that doesn't.
Got
but
there are others
that do.
Do they still exist? Some of them. Okay.
But
forgive me, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, and then MCS developed. We all grew, and a lot of us moved towards St. Charles. Mike has always been super welcoming. Love Mike.
He's just a good guy.
A warm-hearted grizzly bear of a man. And St. Charles is where I've been training since like 2017.
Yeah, good change.
Up to that point, I had done exclusively no-gi jiu-jitsu. That's why I'm currently a brown belt, a two-stripe brown belt under my.
Congratulations, brother.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a hell of an achievement.
Yeah. From a real gym.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wait, why do you say real gym? Sorry.
Because not all gyms are real gyms.
That's fair.
Like
not all black belts are made the same.
Yeah. So I feel particularly good having my brown belt under Mike Rogers.
Who has under Vaghi, who has under the direct
we got a straight line, and this bad boy means something.
Yeah.
And when I pull it out, I make it mean something. But yeah.
Pause. That's gonna be
no.
When I pull it out, I make it mean something.
Unpause.
Unpause. I'm sorry.
No pause at all. When I pull it out, I make it mean
something.
something.
Jesus Christ. You seem to have reverence for two gyms, right? Yeah. So like you kind of briefly went over Finney's and briefly went over 10th Planet, but you've put a good amount of time in describing MCS, and you have a lot of nice things to say about St. Charles and May. Is it safe to say that those two gyms are the ones that kind of shaped your MMA career? Not necessarily.
Heavily.
Do you still forgive me if I'm getting kind of personal, do you still talk to Jared?
Yeah, I talk to Jared all the time. I actually teach jiu-jitsu for him.
At his gym? Oh, that makes sense. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, God bless.
Yeah.
Kept that relationship going. I will say this about Jared. I know that, so I've had him on the podcast once solo, and then he was just on with Terrell. And I know that he had a pass and he had to go through some things, but like, you know how like when you sit down with someone, especially in a long form, you kind of get a gauge for the individual. It's hard to bullshit. Yeah. I'll say this about Jared. I genuinely think that 2015 to 2016, 2017 Jared just made some dumb mistakes. But like as an individual, I think he's just a good fucking guy.
Yeah.
I think he means well.
And that goes for a lot. If you in my book, that goes for a lot.
Yeah. Because everyone's gonna fall short.
Yeah.
I do, you do, but you can't hold that against somebody. Yeah. It's like what do they say? It's not the outcome, it's the intention. That being said, though, you still, you can mean well all you want, but
outcomes matter. Intention is important, but outcomes matter.
I agree with that.
Intentions are very important, but outcomes matter. And like I said, I've been at St. Charles since 2017. Love the place.
And you cross train with Jared still and coach jiu-jitsu at his gym.
Cross train, teach. Get in with the boys, and I think martial arts does a fantastic job of building community. I think that's one of the best features of it.
Why do you think that is, out of curiosity?
Because although most martial arts are an individual sport, it's a communal effort. Like I was saying, like we were touching on before, it's like you'll get a jiu-jitsu champion or you'll get an MMA champion, but it took a whole village of people to get them there. There's the 40-year-old father of two who only comes in on weekends that you still need to get that role with, that's going to show you something that you're not going to get without them. There's the mom of one who will sometimes spot you when you're lifting weights, and I think that's why it's so good at building community. It draws in so many different people, and it puts them in an area where they're all together working on the same goal.
Yeah. I think it's to a lesser extent that band of brothers mentality. It's like, especially with all, you can feel this with the people that are at the gym just training to train. I do subscribe to that. But it's more amplified with the other fighters because like you're cutting weight and you feel miserable and you got lumps, but they're still coming in too. So it's like, hey, he's in the shit with me. Like that's he's coming in on a Sunday to get rolls in with me to get me ready for fighting. How can you not kind of like have that appreciation for somebody? And
to be in such a niche activity, but still have a group of people who understand intimately what you're going through.
Yes.
Like that's I've seen
a wide delta of people. You'll have like the doctor coming in with the lawyer, with the local stoner, the cop. Like, dude, go into any jiu-jitsu gym or any MMA gym, and you're gonna find a petri dish.
You got a real grab bag of folks, and I like that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I very much appreciate about martial arts is the way it can do that, and I think that's very beautiful.
I agree.
But recently I've been focusing on Jiu-Jitsu. You had brought that up.
Yeah.
I'm actually
Can we take a step?
yeah.
How does one even get into Jiu-Jitsu?
Okay, so it's never about what you know, it's always about who you know.
Well, you have to know Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. But so back in the day, as an amateur, when I was fighting on the regional scene, I was a regional champ for a show fight down in Branson. That was the promotion run by a guy named JT Tilley. JT's a great promoter, probably one of the better promoters I've ever met. One of the few ones I have like a lot of nice things to say about.
It's a scummy job.
Yeah. That attracts a lot of very scummy people.
Pause.
But he got out of promoting fight strictly, and then he got into promoting slap fight, and
he was the one who brought it to the States, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was the one who brought slap fighting to the United States.
And then he got into other extreme combat sports, and he was looking for guys, and he called me up because he had known me for it's been like 10 years now that I've known him. And he was like, "You want to do jiu-jitsu in a car?" Like, I got nothing better to do. Y'all paying? And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Sure." And became a Jiu-Jitsu champion. I'm pretty sure I'm the first professional Jiu-Jitsu champion in America.
How did you train for that? Did you get your buddies in the car?
So it's like I've done jiu-jitsu. I've been in a car. It's
just a natural progression.
It's like yeah.
Did you do any rounds in a car? No. So you were just
I'm
raw dogging it.
It's like I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 14 years. I've been riding in cars since I was 2. So
I'm just surprised you didn't you didn't grab a guy from the gym and go, "Hey, let's do this in the car."
Yeah, I didn't have a shitty enough car that I felt comfortable wrestling in. So I was like, I'll figure it out on the fly. But since I've done it now, I know so much more.
Of course, yeah.
Oh man, and one of the moves that comes naturally to me is probably one of the easiest to do and most effective in Jiu-Jitsu, and I've won 4 or 5 matches with it, is a darce. Everyone at this point in Jiu-Jitsu isn't catching on to this really quickly. Is everyone's first instinct is to stop you from taking the seatbelt off, so that you're stuck in the seat. But if you ever go back and you watch any of mine, it's I'm doing everything real slow. I'll take my seatbelt off real slow because I don't really care, because I actually want you to reach over. The thing that they all do is they all reach like this to stop you from taking the seatbelt off. The problem is the moment they reach their arm across here, I just go
underhook,
and now I'm behind their neck. This is 70% of a darts choke. And normally you'd get your back flat to the ground and roll off to get away from here. But you're in a seat, so you can't do that. So I've caught so many guys just reaching. I'm like, if you reach, I teach.
Wow.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, where do you find yourself with Jiu-Jitsu? Let me ask the question in a better way. Mm-hmm. What kind of catches your eye right now? I don't want to gloss over your past, but if we could also sprinkle in some of the current, you still fight in a cage, you still compete in MMA. Yeah. You're doing Jiu-Jitsu. Where are your eyes set on at this point of your career right now? What are your goals?
My goal for MMA is I've yet to win a title as a professional. I'd like to do that before I'm in a stage where I'm winding down my MMA career. I want to stop fighting at 35. Before I turn 36, I'm done fighting. I'm not going to be fighting at the age of 36. You just have so many diminishing returns past that point. And I've been lucky enough to do all this fighting and get to this point relatively fine.
Unscathed,
it's I don't slur my speech. I haven't had a bunch of concussions. My joints are pretty well and good fine. I've had 1 shoulder surgery.
Have you?
Yeah, I had a torn labrum.
Can we talk off the record about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I had to do a cortisone shot.
Mm-hmm.
It was in a camp, and I had to basically I was getting what I thought was tendonitis, and that cortisone shot is now kind of, because, you know, it only lasts like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
It's basically to get me through camp so I can fight.
Yeah.
But now it's way worse than it ever was.
I got the doctor that I had for my shoulder surgery. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Did an immaculate job. My shoulder feels great. And once again,
was it super invasive?
No, I got like 2 scars that are about like that big.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I'm scared to go under the knife if I'm gonna be honest with you.
Well, there's a lot to be scared of, but I can give you my review. It's like my surgery went fantastic.
And
my
does
shoulder
it
feels
feel?
fine. Yeah, shoulder feels great. Overhead, all that stuff. I can't. I don't like sleeping with like any weight on it because it feels heavier, but that's just like a discomfort sensation sort of thing. It's not even
Not
pain.
like a weakness or something.
It's not even pain. It like if I have like a comforter over my shoulder and I'm like laying, it feels like I have a weighted blanket on my shoulder and I just like.
Let's get.
So I just have to. I just hold my arm out when I'm like going to sleep or stuff. But that's really the worst of it.
Isn't it crazy to consider how long you've been training? Because like a lot of people think that a lot of the damage comes from fights. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, it was actually like all my injuries came from training. Very few came from fights.
My shoulder, my torn labrum came from a practice session I had a week and a half before a fight. Hugh Pulley, Hugh the Preacher Pulley, aka the Wolverine, judo tossed me a week and a half before a fight, and I just go, yeah. Wasn't that fight though? That was my Shamrock fight with Malcolm Smith.
It was a good fight. I think I was there for that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was doing Knuckle Junkies or if I was fighting that night too, but I remember being there for that.
Yeah,
it was a good fight.
Yeah.
Do you ever look back on that? Do you ever look back on that like? I want to be careful how I say this because you're not done with MMA. So like I'm not trying to be like
look back on your past.
Yeah. Like for me personally, I was so horse blinders. Like I didn't really care. You know what I mean? I was like on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. But now that I'm done, it affords me the luxury to kind of look back and smell the roses. I'm curious to see how you're handling your career. Do you stop to smell the roses? Are you a horse with blinders on? Like, how do you tackle that?
I think I'm gonna stop and smell the roses guy. I enjoy I enjoy all the rich experiences I've been able to have throughout this life and this career. There's a lot of things that I've gotten to do that I know other people haven't. There are goals that I have and have had that I haven't necessarily gotten to or aren't at yet. But there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't have imagined of doing and have done. So trying to be very cognizant and appreciative of that. One of the sayings that I've picked up and have tried to put out into the world is like, what if you got everything you wanted, but it didn't look how you thought it would? It's like there are plenty of places that I wanted to go to, plenty of things that I wanted to have happen that have, but not necessarily in the way that I thought they would. And I feel like you should still be appreciative of that and aware of that. And I try to do that. I fought in front of thousands of people. I've knocked out people in less time than it takes to heat up a microwave burrito. I've put on amazing performances in front of the people I love, in front of thousands of strangers. I've gotten to travel all over the country, putting my hands on people. So like it's something I try to stay aware of and appreciate.
Sometimes I miss it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I miss it.
Yeah.
Most times I don't, to be honest with you. Most times I don't.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you when it hits, every time I go to, because I like to go to everything. I go to the jiu-jitsu shows now. I go to all the shows like Shamrock, NFA, doesn't matter. The last stand-up fight series, I was at that. I like to support the events now because I remember like when I was a fighter, how important it was to have the people come and support. You know what I mean? So like I want to like both monetarily and through the podcast, like give back in my own way now. So like
be community.
Yeah, very fair. But every time I go,
that bug, man,
I don't feel it any other time. Yeah. And then I love watching the fights. Like I'm not trying to like put myself in there. But then like by the end of the night, I'm like,
I got
only
one
32.
More. I got one more.
Yeah.
I got one more.
Yeah. And then I wake up in the morning. I was like, for what?
Yeah,
for
man.
What?
that's the thing. It's like plenty of folks just are never gonna understand. They're not gonna have an appreciation for it. It's like, man, having a fight, being there, having a fight is the most nerve-wracking, anxiety-inducing, sweat-creating, mind-rattling thing right before you have to fight. Just all the emotions, anxiety, the pressure, all that stuff is so immense. But you don't really feel any of that the moment you're in there. No. The moment you're actually in there doing it. Me personally, that's one of the things that keeps me around. Part of it is like I have a time that I want to be done, and also I've always told myself this: if at any moment that I'm in there, I don't want to be in there, then I should be done. That's the time to get out. And I have never had that feeling, but every single time I was like, early on. I surprised my girlfriend when I was talking to her about fighting and the way she thought people thought about it. And I was like, I'm scared every single time I go in a fight. I've had over 50 fights, and there's not a time I've gone in there where I wasn't afraid, very afraid before I go in there, like just mind racked with all the possibilities and all the what's ifs. But I do it anyway because I'm not going to let fear stop me from doing something I want to do. I'm very much afraid, but I'm going to do what I want regardless.
God bless. I think that's the proper way to do it. I remembered myself, those emotions that you're talking about, I used to look at them with like negative connotations. Like I was like, man, I'm such a pussy. Like, why am I so afraid? Like, when am I going to get over this? And the truth of the matter is, I don't think I was ever going to get over it. But here's the other thing I'm going to say as being removed from it. All those things that I used to look back on and like, why was I so nervous? Why was I like all this? I miss that as well. So like, I miss fighting. I miss being in the cage. There's a part of me that misses even the training aspect because it is a therapy, like, in my opinion, like going out there and hitting something. It's a whole package. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's pros and cons to everything. Yeah. But I also miss fight night. I also miss feeling like I got to shit my pants every 10 minutes, you know what I mean? And because I felt so alive. Money didn't matter. My responsibilities didn't matter. Tomorrow didn't matter. The only thing that mattered for the next 3 or 4 hours was tonight. And then we'll worry about everything else after tonight. Yeah. And there's something a little like fucked up and freeing about that. And it makes me think, I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to sound like like a crazy man. I think that all men should experience that.
I think, yeah.
Because the only way to experience that outside of that is like war. Yeah. Life and death.
I think...
at least we can both walk away from this.
Human beings are violent by nature, not to have the capacity for violence by nature. And it's something that I think most people would benefit having explored.
Yes. Men and women.
Yeah.
Men and women.
Most people, like, just... There are things to be learned about yourself in that experience that you may not ever be able to get to without it. And the fighting being a whole package, the emotions, everything makes it what it is, tied up into that little ball. And we both have a love for that little ball.
It's kind of fucked up, but it's also beautiful.
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking is like the outcast oddball thing. I think that might just be displaying neurodivergence. For me, I have ADHD. And I got diagnosed with that when I was like 10.
Is ADHD
attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? So
you're just constantly like,
it's
the next thing. Okay.
For me, the way I described the experience when I was a child was like experiencing life was like having on a wall of televisions and I don't know which one to look at. I'm taking in all this information
like
at once.
That Matrix scene. Where they go to the source.
Yeah, but everything's going at once. And the freeing thing for me about fighting was like, there's only one TV right now. Like when you're fighting, there is one channel, and it is the channel of this fight. And there's something very almost peaceful about that. It's like you can there is no other noise. There are very few situations in life where you really get to be fully committed, where your mind isn't distracted by the myriad things that are going on in your life at any given time. But you, in a fight, you definitely, I do not care if I left the stove on. I do
We'll
not
handle that when we get there.
yeah, I do not care how much is due on my phone bill. I don't care if my tires need air right now. I care about not letting this adult man punch me in the face.
Yeah.
And
Which begs the question. I think that in a lot of ways I benefit from having a full plate. Like I like that I'm busy because when I'm left to my own devices, when like if you leave me alone with nothing to do, it's almost as if like I don't know what to do with myself. You know what I mean? However, when I have one thing like a fighting or something, I resonate with that word peace. There was this like zen to it. It was the calm in the chaos, so to speak. And I also felt that euphoria that you were talking about, right? I think what we as humans crave more than anything is extremes. So like if you're always happy, you'll never be happy because that's your status quo.
Yeah.
So like, you know, it takes a valley to appreciate a peak and vice versa, right? So I think the reason we felt that way, because like, let me put it this way. If you fought every day, how long until that gets fucking old?
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck this shit,
Yeah.
right? So I think the spice of life is that dichotomy of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You need a little monotony. You need a little safety.
Yeah.
I want to wake up tomorrow and I don't have to.
It can't be all chaos.
But it can't. Yes, and it can't all be all peace.
Yeah.
A peaceful life is
Nothing's happening. Nothing's happening.
There's no conflict.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we crave conflict.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Because with conflict comes resolution.
So do we crave conflict because we crave resolution?
We crave conflict because we crave engagement.
Yeah. I would resonate with that.
Yeah. We want to engage with something. We want to do something. We want to be a part of something. And it's like
it gives us purpose. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Conflict gives us purpose.
And
there's something to overcome. I have a thing now that I can do.
And if we're going like macro from an evolutionary standpoint, being good or adapted to have a capacity for conflict is just
survival.
Smart business.
Yeah. Smart business. So if you don't mind, I do want to go back because we were briefly discussing like the goals that you have in fighting, and you were kind of touching on the fact that like, okay, you know for a fact you don't want to do it past 35, and that you want to, at least in MMA, win a professional belt at a promotion. Yeah. What about the other things that you're doing, like the car jiu-jitsu? Is that like just like a side quest? Is that like are there goals there as well?
That one's I'm filling out wherever it takes me. It's like that's something I feel comfortable doing for a longer period of time. I feel comfortable doing that to the point where I'm like 40 because it's like nobody's trying to punch me in the face. I
was going to ask if you were going to kind of switch over because I feel like the natural conclusion or the natural transition for all of us fighters seems to be jiu-jitsu. Yeah, like Dowdy and Sella and all these guys, like everybody that retires then goes on to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. So when you say that you're going to be done competing at 35, surely you mean just MMA. Yeah. And you're going to compete, and I'm sure once you get your black belt, you'll be doing super fights and all this other stuff. Yeah.
Another part of that is like past 35, I intend to get my black belt relatively soon, next year and a half. I want to open up my own gym. I'd like to open up my own gym out in Florissant and do something similar to what was done for me with MCS out in North County. And
would you not, forgive me if this is kind of like a probing too much, why don't you just join with Jared and like
that may be a part of it?
Got you. Forgive me.
No, it's fine. That's an open possibility. Whatever avenue gets us there, the best is.
Would you want to do like strictly jiu-jitsu or would you want to do MMA?
I want a whole MMA gym.
Okay.
Of course, focus on jiu-jitsu because I have my jiu-jitsu black belt. That's my predominant favored martial art. I love them all, and I'm a big fan of MMA. But it's like
everyone's got a preference.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason why I want to wind down the MMA career. I wouldn't want to do both.
It's very fucking hard. Dude.
Yeah.
Fighting's a selfish endeavor.
Yeah. And at the point I open my own gym, I want to actually. Many people open their own gym and don't have the ability, capacity, or time to dedicate to making it thrive and giving people the attention they need when you open a gym. And that's something I want to account for. I want to be able to have the time that I can pour into other people in the way needed for a gym to function and thrive.
Have you talked to other gym owners about your thoughts, and like have they presented to you some like I want to be careful how I say this, like not necessarily mentorship, advice, mentorship, hey, do this, don't do that. Have you talked to like Mike or Jared about?
Yeah, I talk to Mike and Jared relatively regularly about this sort of thing.
What's their synopsis?
They are in agreement with my desire to do so and believe that I have the capacity. I'm one of the best suited candidates for that.
Yeah.
And of course, Mike is my sensei. Of course, I would only be doing this with their support and help. So,
well, you wouldn't be the first, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, think about how many guys like Kirk got Arnold BJJ, and then, I mean, even Mike Rogers to an extent. I mean, you could say like Vaghi kind of passed the baton to him. So, I mean, Mike is a reflection of the exact thing you're talking about.
Yeah, and we have that community, and we have our sister gyms, but we don't have anything in Florissant or North County in that end, and I think I can help bridge that gap.
God bless.
And that's part of the giving back. I'm looking into ways to make it, if at all possible, a nonprofit. That may be the best route. That's one of the avenues I'm looking down to get to as many people as I possibly can and make this the sort of project that I'd like to be as helpful as possible. Looking down avenues, I might partner with the Boys and Girls Club because there's ones down there, and but that's something I'm passionate about and something I feel I can put that energy into, because a big part of leaving fighting is where do you put that energy, and I think that gets a lot of people in trouble because they don't really consider that or have a cogent plan for that.
Well, I'll go more than that. A lot of people poured into you. Now it's your time to pour into others. I think it's just the natural progression of life. And I think it's also really good that you're deciding to do that in that specific area, because I think, maybe you'll agree with me, maybe you won't, I think it's very important for youth to have things in which they are busy with. Yeah. Because if they're at the gym with you, then there's 20 other places they're not. Yeah. That could be worse off for them. Yeah. I know for myself, like a big reason why I liked wrestling so much was because I wasn't at home, like fucking around doing stupid shit, you know what I mean? Or out with like the guys doing less than reputable acts, you know what I mean? It kept me...
Tomfoolery, shenanigans.
A younger man with no plan.
Yeah.
But it kind of gave me that purpose and direction when I needed it most as a youth. Mm-hmm. And then when I got older, it was like, it kind of molded that discipline in me of like, hey, there needs to be a path. I don't need to know what that path is, but there needs to be a path in front of me. I can't not be doing anything. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important to have in youth, and if you're going to be doing it in an area that doesn't already have one, even better. You're in essence doing the Lord's work.
Trying.
God bless. Well, listen, man, when that time comes, let me know. Maybe I can help out in some way.
Absolutely.
You never know who I might know or what I might know.
Takes a village.
Yes. I also like it when people have, it goes back to what we were having the conversation earlier. I think you'll do a lot better. You'll do a lot more good yourself than hoping someone else will do it. And I'm a very big proponent of like, if you have a passion, if you have an endeavor you want to achieve, then fucking go for it. If it's a not-for-profit, cool, whatever. It doesn't fucking matter what it is, but like, don't wait for someone else to kind of do it. If you see the hole, fill it.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Be the change you want to see in the world. That's a much better way to say it than I said it.
Hey, sometimes you got to fill holes. Sometimes.
Earlier in the conversation, you were kind of touching on this thought process, or I guess this idea of previous generations kind of, comparing and contrasting, not necessarily just previous generations, but also in comparison to their generation. Yeah. You use the term like, we were stronger back then, or times were tougher back then, or whatever. We've both been in MMA now. I mean, you've been longer than me. You've been going on 15 years. This will be I only fought for 12 years. So like I'm going on 13, 14 years, but 2 of those have been out of the game, right? But I mean, I remember when I first started Jim Jenkins shows, Heart of St. Charles, you were there, and Fight Hard, Fight Me before it was Fight Hard. Yeah. I mean, we've seen a lot of things, a lot of gyms, a lot of fighters, a lot of promotions, a lot of promoters, a a lot of styles come and go. I guess I'll start with a more nuanced question, then we can go broader than that. Do you think MMA, local MMA, is better today, or was it better back then?
Better today, 100%. 100%. The democratization of knowledge has made MMA so like light years better today than it was, I'd say, like when I got started. When we got started, they were having so many of these regional fights were smokers. You were fist fighting someone in a bar, behind a cornfield, in a room full of cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
I've done that on more than one occasion, but you never see that now. And we have
it's a lot more professional now.
Yeah.
You look at NFA and Shamrock and all these guys, casinos, Armory, the Factory. I mean, just the venues that these people have are amazing.
Yeah.
That being said, we did have the Family Arena, though.
Yeah.
The Family Arena was pretty fucking awesome.
What was baller, was super baller to be an amateur guy fighting in a full stadium.
We
that
had
was
it good.
Sick.
We had it good.
That was
Kenny Nolling was a piece of shit.
Yeah,
but we had it good.
Yeah. But
I
sure. But
allegedly,
allegedly. But yeah, the kids these days is like they come in knowing so much just from the benefit of having seen the sport. Like so many of them have seen so much. Have seen so much more of the sport and operating at such a higher level than it was in the days that we came in. So yeah, it's like I got a kid that I train with, the Mason Stritzel.
I heard really good things about him.
An absolute stud. He's like 16, and I
didn't know how young he was.
Yeah, he's
already a purple belt.
Yeah,
he was just at Adam's show and tapped out. Forgive me, Nick. I forget Nick's last name, but tapped out Nick and. Forgive me, wasn't the most competitive match. Yeah. And then I learned he was 16. I go, dude, fuck that. Yeah. That's another reason whenever I think about getting back into fighting, I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't need some 18-year-old beating my ass.
Yeah, there's a 19-year-old out there that knows witchcraft, and you just don't want to find out.
No.
So I think that's great. I like that for the sport in the way that it's developed. Just the skill set is so much higher. People coming in these days we just know so much.
They're so complete already.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is like when you and I came up, like it was like usually like, okay, wrestler, jiu-jitsu, learned striking, or striker who learned wrestling and jiu-jitsu.
You usually had 1.5 things.
Yes. Now these kids are just so fucking good from the get-go. They didn't do wrestling or jiu-jitsu. They did all of it.
They did MMA. They come into the sport learning MMA, not learning things to put together in an MMA game.
The beautiful thing too is like these guys haven't come into their own yet. Yeah. There's a generation that's just waiting to hit the UFC, the ONE FC and everything that are going to be killers.
Yeah. That's all that's coming down the pipeline now.
What do you think in terms of, so I agree with you in terms of the skill level of MMA fighters. I agree. We said it earlier, we'll say it again. The best fighters exist today. The better fighters will exist tomorrow, so on and so forth. What do you think about the opportunities in MMA today versus previous? Or how has it changed? X, Y, and Z.
It has changed. In a lot of ways, it's gotten rougher to start out and get somewhere.
I agree.
Why though? The monetary structure for MMA, especially if we're going towards like the middle or even top end, your opportunities to make money are just smaller from just the sport aspect. There was a long time where MMA held up its own like middle class with sponsorships, the patches that you had on the shorts, but most organizations are following from the top of the river, and they say no sponsors on shorts and that sort of thing. So that eliminated a lot of revenue for guys who aren't going to be the top end stars, but still draw enough to get attention, and it's made it really hard to be in that space.
Yeah, I would also go a step further and say that there's just less promotions. Like I remember when I was coming up, You had Jim Jenkins, you had Shamrock, you had Cage Warrior, Cage Champs.
We had
you
NFA.
had NFA, the OG NFA. I forget the name of the promoter that owned it. But then you could also travel like a little bit out, and then you had, forgive me, the ones in Cape, and there was
the ones in Cape, the ones in Branson, the ones in Kansas
and also
City.
the local gym shows. Like I remember Broadway Athletic Club did a couple shows.
Yeah.
It's just like if you wanted to fight, there was no shortage of fights. Also, no shortage of fighters.
Yeah.
Are there less fighters today?
I don't think so.
You think it's the same number?
Yeah, I just
because there's less gyms.
Yeah,
that's the other thing I was gonna say. There's also less gyms.
I think there's been a consolidation of organizations and gyms to an extent, and
for better or worse, you think?
I'd like to wait to see. I think we need a little more time in this space that we're in to make a good judgment call on it.
That's fair.
But yeah, like we lost a lot of regional. The pandemic was just so.
I think it wrecked MMA for a while.
Yeah, it was catastrophic for so many industries.
How many people got pregnant and then retired from COVID? Yeah. Like they were stuck at home. Yeah. And they weren't training, so they're just sitting around with their lady all day, popping out a few kids. Now they're like, "Hey, I gotta work.
They're like, I'm done. I got priorities now."
Dude, the best fighters in the world never got to the final stage because they got some girl pregnant.
And
the right call. They decided to, I got to be a man. I got to earn all this other stuff. Like, I'm not trying to knock it.
And then you have the organizations too. How many organizations folded? How many regional organizations folded because they weren't able to operate shows?
Yeah.
And we're like, it's just like a ripple effect, like a wave. We're still experiencing all the effects of that.
I think it will be experienced for the rest of our life because we're going to be able to attribute it. Think about it. It's like you stop something. It's like a wave. You stop something. So that's going to keep moving, stifled forever.
Yeah.
Everything from the high schoolers at the time and like their stunted education to opportunities that we felt. Dude, I look back at COVID and I'm like, oh, that's right. There was like a 2-year gap there that like I just overlooked. That was like my life.
A swirling vortex.
And I lost good years out of my prime from that. I lost from 27 to 29, like years old.
Yeah.
That's fucking annoying.
Yeah.
I feel you. CJ's like, you don't say.
Same boat. I know. I'm paddling right next to you.
Dude.
I'm paddling right next to you. Yeah. And this is just a vehicle to look at it from. I think that I think it's going to work out for MMA. I think things are gonna get better. I may just being an optimist. One of the bright spots I still have is there's still stuff going on with the UFC lawsuit.
Which one?
The class action.
Antitrust.
Yeah.
I thought they settled.
They did settle, but
the judge came in and said, no, that's right. That's right. I do remember that.
Yeah. And I think that's the only currently the only realistic avenue in which structural change is going to happen.
Yeah, but here's the problem, though. Like, I don't mean to be a pessimist on it. The fact that they agreed on a settlement before and that the judge came in and said, like, no, this isn't enough, it makes me question the fervency in that fight still. They were willing to accept this. Yeah. If they're willing to see it to its conclusion, to enact actual change, that's one thing.
But the judge calling it back, saying this settlement doesn't cover damages and address the structural problems.
So do you mind Googling real quick, UFC antitrust lawsuit, judge recommendation, because I want to make sure I'm correct on this one.
We're getting this right, yeah.
The way I believe it to be was that they originally agreed on a settlement offer, but a judge came in and said that the amount offered was not conducive to the damages. Basically, the judge said, like, no, these guys are accepting way too less money.
Yeah,
like for this to be adequate, we need to up this number.
What I heard
it wasn't that she was saying that the settlement was unavailable. She was saying the settlement for that amount was inadequate.
But yeah, what I heard was that it was inadequate.
Sorry.
Uh-huh.
That seems kind of low still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure what. I
Then
didn't see anything like it was changed.
So maybe it was approved. You said it was approved by the state of Nevada, the state, I guess the state athletic commission. I don't know.
Yeah, what was the exact question? Maybe
Okay, forgive
well,
me.
judge's ruling.
Well, hold up. Did that go through? Like, did the settlement go through?
Because
The last I heard of it, a
the
judge got in the
held
way.
it up.
Sorry, we're putting you on the spot, brother.
Yeah.
No, that's right. No, it says the U.S. District Judge Richard something granted final approval to the settlement.
Okay, so the settlement went through. So there goes.
So
270.
the second lawsuit led by
Cajun Johnson.
yeah, covering fighters from 2017 onward remains unresolved.
Okay.
So the original one with like Randy Couture and all those guys.
That's the one that got.
That's the one that got
settled.
the settlement. Well, they got 275.
Yeah.
We said it was too low, but you know what? There's 1,200 fighters that got $275,000, and there was some good that was done from it.
Yeah.
What would you have rather seen? The whole thing get upended?
I would like the Ali Act to apply to MMA. I think that would be cool. That's what I want.
Isn't it so crazy?
If
how
I
he's
got
getting,
the magic wand,
isn't it so crazy how he's getting involved in boxing strictly in Abu Dhabi?
he's-
Because then the laws of this land, if you want to go back to like crony capitalism and talk about like hating the billionaires, when you start talking about some shit like this, this is where I, even as a capitalist, step back and go, hey, y'all got a point.
and also Dana White is like the devil.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would.
Well, without him, we would not have the UFC today.
All right. Okay.
So for good and bad, because I would also make the same. Remember how I was saying compare and contrast? Fighters today make so much more money than they used to. Is it comparable to what we quote unquote think they should make? No. But is it better? Dude, you got millionaire fighters now in MMA. And actually,
but Dane,
the median income in MMA now has superseded the median income in boxing. It's better to be an average MMA fighter than an average boxer.
The UFC spends like, I think the high end was like 18% of total revenue on fighter pay.
We don't know that. We don't know that.
Yeah, we do. That's not speculation. We have
because even the publicly available documents, they don't dissect the amount. Like, okay, so labor expenses could be 1099 employees, it could be W-2 and all these other things. It's still speculation. We can have a better assessment of it. But if you said 18%, you don't know that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but the rough number,
maybe 25% on that.
Like, if we're generous, that's grotesque. In a sport where you were playing with the ball and didn't have this much risk of lifelong
they have
trauma.
unions. They have unions.
Yeah, I wish that we had you. My issue isn't necessarily how we got here or not understanding that or the things that come here. My issue is that it is happening. My issue is that it on the high end, if we were being generous, giving them everything, it's 25%. If we are viewing this with the rosiest colored glasses, they are paying athletes 25% of revenue, and this is a sport solely built on fighters. Like they don't even have.
I don't agree with that. I think it's a machine. The marketing machine. When the UFC during COVID, the way they were able to pivot, that's impressive.
Yeah.
They're the only promotion doing fights. You and I locally had to sit down. They were getting fighters fights.
Yeah, and UFC's marketing engine has always been kind of lazy. Like,
I think it's the best in the market.
All right.
By the way, I think it's best in the market for combat sports.
Two things can be true at once. I think it can be the best in the market and still be kind of lazy.
Fair.
Yeah.
They're not mutually exclusive.
I think
it was better. And then after Conor and Ronda, they sat down and said, we can never let a fighter get bigger than the brand ever again. I think they learned from that. But I think they kind of got lost in the sauce. I'd be curious what you hear on or what you think about this. I think that the reason the UFC is at the level it was, because I actually think it's plateaued. I think MMA is plateaued.
Yeah.
The reason it got to that height was because you allowed for characters to develop. Yeah. Now, by virtue of having characters develop, they get leverage.
Yeah.
Maybe Conor wants 1% equity stake. You know what? It is hard to argue Conor doesn't deserve that. It's hard to argue.
Especially at the height of his powers, that he didn't deserve it.
Yes.
And
however, ever since then, if you've noticed, everything is like homogenous. It's like UFC 3 something, whatever. They don't
Make
market.
stars.
Yeah,
They don't make stars anymore.
They moved the sponsorships from the fighters to the canvas.
Yeah.
They moved everything to be
The UFC is the star, not
the UFC is the net between everybody and the fighters. So like to get to the fighters, you have to go through the UFC. And there's always that middleman cut. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. That's the only real problem I have with the UFC now is, you know, if you have the Venom deal, fine. Why is it that you can't have patches on the Venom gear? Like, why is it that you can't have a banner? Fine, I don't have the logos on my shit or whatever. Why can't I still have a banner? Like, there are things that were, in my opinion, a little egregious. Right? The Reebok deal was egregious.
And the fact that like none of them fighters really saw any sort of money off of their
5,000, dude. Come on.
And so I see that. I see those sorts of things happening, and I'm like, yeah, I don't. I'm not a fan of.
There is some criticism to be made. Now here's my retort to that though. If it was so that people could do it and do it better, why hasn't anybody? Because we've seen the PFL and Bellator and ONE FC, yet the UFC is still king.
Ruthless business practices
I think it's the best product.
Ruthless business practices aid you in getting a corner on the market. They do.
They were first.
And they were first, and then they became the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And I mean, Dana being plugged up with the president doesn't help. It doesn't hurt his odds of things.
Yeah, but of the years in which the UFC was in its ascension, you're talking about like 4 years and 4 months. DJT was a possible factor in that.
Well, like, no, but I'm saying even now, like the reason that other companies can't succeed now is because it's harder for them because the 800-pound gorilla in the room is friends with the president.
Yeah, but I don't think, let me put it this way. I think if Kamala Harris was president right now, I still don't think that there would be a direct competitor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Once again,
I think it's a variable that is like a hypothetical in case of that would never even be like a real variable because still people don't get to that point. Let me put it to you this way. PFL's been in the game for how long now? I can't tell you. I love this sport. I follow this sport.
They were World Series of Fighting before they were PFL,
Bellator went out of business, sold to them, and then World Series of Fighting went out of business and sold to them. Yeah. So what I'm saying is like the PFL has been actively fighting this for how many years now? Yeah. And I still cannot tell you, like if you put a gun to my head and told me, Ariane, when's the next PFL? I'd lose my life.
So name three PFL fighters.
Well, Chuka Willis just got signed, so I know one at least. But no, I mean if you ask me to name 2 or 3, I don't.
So yeah.
And so that's my thing is like we have these criticism which I do think have merit and weight. I do. However, my natural retort is then like, okay, well, if they're doing it so bad and it is so egregious, why hasn't anybody stepped in and like overpowered them? And I think the number one reason is that I think it's an inherently difficult business.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. It is an incredibly inherently difficult business. It's like you have to manage so many personalities. And
not when you have exclusive contracts.
When
you can sign your soul. I do agree on the Ali Act. If the Ali Act was extended, the UFC doesn't have the power it does.
And I think it shouldn't in that case.
I think it's a matter of time before it's only a matter of time until it does get extended. I think when Dana steps down as president, I think the lobbying firms are going to come out hard.
Fingers crossed. One can hope. Oh man,
sorry.
But
past our time, we don't get the benefits of it.
Yeah. Hopefully we get to see the children benefit from the fruits of our labor.
Yeah, they stand on the shoulders of giants. Dude, I appreciate you coming out here.
I appreciate you having me.
I said this off the record, but I'll say it on the record. I've known you for a decade now. Yeah. You know what I mean? But this is the most I've ever gotten to sit down and talk with you. I have one last question for you.
Absolutely.
Did your perception of who I was change after this conversation?
No. I've seen a few of these, and I have I had and have a very optimistic viewpoint on you. I think you're a really decent guy with an open heart, and that's all I could ever want from anyone.
I appreciate
it. and I, based on the setting we're in, I know you're entrepreneurial, and I know you have drive and ambition. We're both fighters, so I think we ultimately have more similarities than differences.
I agree.
And I can appreciate, I both could and can and do appreciate the things that make you different.
Well, I'll tell you something. You both surprised and did not surprise me. There were aspects of you that I knew would be very similar to me because of our fighting background. And the things that you said today, I was like, yes, like 100% yes. You know what I mean? I'll tell you the things that surprised me about you. You're actually, and you might not like this, but it was honestly the same thing that surprised me about Mop as well. You guys play around as like this pseudo clown, but you're actually a lot more intellectual than you let on. And I can appreciate that because if there's anything I dislike more than anything, it's dumb conversation. Mm-hmm. And today I had a very good conversation. And it's conversations like today that, like, it's not that they remind me why I did a podcast, but it's like, fuck yeah, I'm so glad I did this shit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It strengthens my resolve for it. So I want to say, from one way into another, first, thank you for being the short notice replacement. And second, thank you for raising the bar, brother. I really enjoyed this episode.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Anyone who's seen any part of my career knows I show up, and I relish the opportunity to be a part of the community. Yeah. And that's what this is, and and even more so, I relish the opportunity of being a part of your art.
I appreciate that, brother. Before we put a cap on this, I want to say two things. Or I want to say something and then ask something. The thing I'll say is, when you get to the point where you want to execute on that goal of yours, let me know.
Absolutely.
I'm genuine about this one because I love to see people kind of like, it doesn't have to be an entrepreneurial quote unquote goal, but whenever someone's striving for something that is above themselves, yes, an extension of themselves, I love that shit. Because I think that's I think that's the beauty of humanity, to grow past ourselves. So when you want to execute on that, I would like to get in on that in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
And the second thing, before we put a cap on this, I know that you have a lot of things going on, and I want to give you the platform now to discuss some of the things that you're working on, the next fight. The floor is yours, sir.
First and foremost, people can follow me on my socials. So you can see my logo here. Team Ground Shark on any place that has ads. You can follow me. I'm currently at I have 30,000 fans on my Facebook page. So that's
no shit.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that.
Yeah. I'm putting up some numbers.
That's
just a little
fucking impressive, dude.
Yeah, nah. We get out.
Humble brag.
We out there from time to time.
15,000 people asking what a ground shark is.
Hey, you can find out. Team Ground Shark on all my socials. I'll be on. Should be on ESPN this weekend. ESPN2 with their PLN is Pro League Network is hosting one of their Jiu-Jitsu events, big it's like a whole extreme sports extravaganza. There's going to be like tire wrestling and like some other stuff. I'm not doing slap fighting. Any slaps I will not be a part of, but I may do some other wild stuff. No slaps.
Isn't that funny how like that's like, dude, Colton Cole does that.
Yeah, hey, more power to you.
Yeah, teach their own.
More power. I'm more than willing to exchange hands, but I'm not standing still and let you hit me. No.
Especially a slap. If you wanted to punch me, I think I'd be like more open to that. But there's something like degrading about some man slapping the shit out of me.
You gotta stand there and watch and not move. Go to hell.
You're a better man than I. Colton.
Yeah, better.
I can't do it. I'm a weak, small man.
I'm the weekest, the smallest.
I just can't do it.
I gotta look you in the eye and let you slap me. Suck my dick from the back. No, hell no. No,
dude.
But yeah, probably you'll be able to. They're doing a whole bunch of events. You can catch me on those. ESPN2. And if you follow me on my socials, you'll know when I have my next fight. I'll be putting hands on somebody in short notice. In soon enough time.
We'll tag everything in the description of this. We'll put all the social media and everything. So we tried to do our part in that one at least. Brother, I can't thank you enough. Seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This was fun.
Fantastic.